Welcome. This is a deck profile on Runick Darklord. A pretty decently fitting combination as both are fairy base archetypes. And well, if you don't recognize it, Runick is an upcoming archetype coming out in Tactical Masters. And Darklords are a pretty old archetype, about 5 years or so old at this point. And well, the goal of this deck is to just grind and control your opponent until either they surrender or you mill them out. It's a deck that's never winning before turn 10, if you can't tell from just looking at it. Now, to start off with, the Runick cards. Runick is an archetype of all spell cards in the main deck and some extra deck monsters, and mostly quick play spells. Now to start off with the quick play spells, I am running 3 Destruction Runick, which can destroy an opponent's spell trap and then banish 4 off the top of their deck. Freezing Curse Runick, which can negate opponent's monster effect, banish 3. Destroy an opponent's monster, banish 2. Dispel Runick, which discards a card from opponent's hand when they search and banishes 2. And Scale Point Runick, which searches a Runick card. And all quick play Runick spells share the ability to special summon a Runick from the extra deck to the extra monster zone as an alternative effect. Although do note you can only activate one copy of these cards per turn, and so if you use the effect to summon from the extra deck, you can't use another copy to use its normal effect. Next, there are non-quick play spell cards, Runick Deceit, which each time a quick play spell card is activated, banish an extra card from the top of your opponent's deck, which can be useful to actually mill them out. Then one copy of Runick Spring, which is the main field spell, and normally you probably want to run 2, but deck space in this is pretty tight, and I don't fear Cosmic Cyclone game 1. As for its effect, it allows you to activate Runick quick play spell cards from your hand during your opponent's turn, which is pretty strong. Then, once per turn, if you activate a Runick quick play spell card, you can target up to 3 Runick quick play spells in your graveyard, place them on the bottom of the deck in any order, then draw that many. And this is how you keep the Runick engine going, as you can continuously recycle them and draw 3 every turn once you have it set up. And I am citing 1 copy for games 2 and 3 whenever they inevitably cite in all of their back removal. Now, as for the Darklord package, I am running 3 Darklord Eggshell, which allows you to discard itself and another Darklord card to draw 2 cards, and when it's on the field, you can quick effect pay 1000 life points, copy a Darklord spell trap, and shuffle it into the deck. Then I'm running 3 Darklord Superbia. When it is special in your graveyard, you can reborn a fairy type monster from your graveyard except for Superbia. Do note, this can and will miss timing. Then I'm running 1 copy of Darklord Amdusk, which allows you to discard itself another Darklord card to add a Darklord card from your graveyard to your hand, and has the same copying effect as Eggshell. Then I'm running 3 Indulged Darklord, and this card, if it is normal special summoned, you can take 2 Darklord monsters from your hand or deck with different levels, special summon one of them to your opponent's side of the field in defense position, and add the other to your hand, but it locks you into fairy effects for this turn, which doesn't really matter in this deck, and being able to search a Darklord monster is pretty nice. Then I'm running 1 Darklord Uko back, or if it is normal special summoned, you can send any Darklord card from your deck to your graveyard. Then, 3 Banishment of Darklord, which is just searches any Darklord card from your deck to your hand, and as well as Darklord Contact, which allows you to reborn any Darklord. And what's nice about these is you can copy them off of Eggshell or Amdusk, and this bypasses their once per turn. Same goes for the trap cards, the Sanctify Darklord, which makes you send 1 Darklord from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard, and non-targeting negate the effect of a monster in the field until the end of the turn, and if you do, you gain life points equal to its attack. Now do note, if you copy this effect off the Darklords, you don't pay its cost. Same with Darklord Enchantment, which allows you to take control of 1 face-up once your opponent controls until the end phase, which is also non-targeting. And while the Darklord engine is very useful, as long as it lets you draw cards and be more consistent a little bit, it lets you control the game better, as looping all the Darklord cards over and over with all their effects can allow you to really keep resources going and slowly grind out the opponent. Then I'm running 3 Gamma and a Driver as the hand trap of choice, because if your opponent, say, ashes one of your Runick spells, you can trigger this to summon Gamma and Driver, negate the effect, and then summon Omega, which is a very strong synchro card, especially in a control deck like this. And well, as for the extra deck, I am of course running Omega, then Unicorn and Phoenix as generic link monsters, especially to take advantage of enchantment. One Condemned Darklord to help the Darklord engine out a little bit and maybe, gain some life points. Then for the Runick extra deck monsters, 2 Gary the Runick Fangs, where if it is special from the extra deck, you can add a non-quick play spell Runick spell from your grave to your hand, so you can recycle a Destroy, Deceit, or Spring. And it cannot be destroyed by card effects, and if destroyed by battle, you can target a card in the field and destroy it. And this effect is pretty useful as later in the duel, if you want to stop your opponent from just beating you to death if you aren't controlling many monsters, you can summon this as a blocker that also gets rid of one of their cards. Then I'm running 1 Moonin the Runick Wings, which if it is special summoned in the extra deck, you discard a card and add a Runick continuous spell from your deck to your hand, which is Deceit. And when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a Runick card or a set card you control, you can banish this card you control, negate the activation, and destroy that. And once per turn, during both end phases, gain 1000 life points. Then for the final Runick extra deck monster, I'm running Hugin the Runick Wings. And this has a similar effect, but instead of adding a continuous spell, this adds a field spell, in this case, Runick Spring. And if whenever card you control be destroyed by card effect, you can banish this card you control instead, and if this card in the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can return to the extra deck. Now as for the last part of the extra deck, I'm just running a super polymerization target package, as there's plenty of flex spaces in this list. Now as for what this deck can actually do, this is a pretty solid hand, consisting of Darklord Nastin, which I'm not running anymore, but you can if you want. Skill point Runick, Darklord Superbia, Banishment of Darklords, and Runick Spring. Now to start off with, I will activate Banishment of Darklords, as this will allow me to search out Ixchel, and at worst baits out a Nash. After I've searched Ixchel, I can activate her effect and discard Superbia to draw 2 cards. In this case, drawing Brilliant Flame Runick and Darklord Contact. Next I can use Contact to reborn Superbia, who then reborns Ixchel. One thing to note, if you reborn Superbia off of Ixchel's effect copying Contact, it will miss timing. Fun! In this case, I'll go ahead and pay 1000 Ixchel and use Banishment, copying its effect to then search Sanctified Darklord for a negate. I'll then activate Runick Spring, and activate Point of the Mist Room, as this will allow me to search a Runick spell card, in this case, Freezing Curse, banish a card from the top of their deck, and then I will use Runick Spring to put it back in the deck and draw 1 card, in this case Gamma. I will then set Sanctified Darklord and pass. And as for what this board does, will Sanctified Darklord represent 2 negates, because first on field effect, then I can copy it with Ixchel to trigger it again. Then I also have a Destruction with Brilliant Flame Runick, and negate with Freezing Curse, and these will turn to a draw 2. As well as a Gamma if my board ends up being wiped somehow. So this is a pretty solid hand that gets the whole engine going. Now as for what the deck can do with a less ideal hand, this is a hand that consists of Darklord Contact, Psyframe Driver, Darklord Amdusk, Psyframe Gear Gamma, and Banishment of the Darklord. To start off with, I'll activate Banishment to search, of course, Ixchel. Then I'll use Ixchel alongside Amdusk to draw 2. In this case, drawing 2 skill point Runicks. I will then activate Darklord Contact to bring back Ixchel. I use Ixchel's effect to copy Banishment to search Sanctified Darklord again. Then I will activate Skill Point Runick and search a Runick card. In this case, I will be searching the field spell. And I will banish 1 card from the top of the opponent's deck. Activate the field spell and pass. And this board doesn't look like much as it represents no miss interruption from the looks of it, and just Sanctified Darklord. But this does much more than it seems, because on the opponent's turn, I can use Ixchel to bring back Amdusk from the graveyard. This can be an extra body to use your Sanctified Darklord's negate. Then I can activate Skill Point Runick to go ahead and search out from my deck Brilliant Flame Runick. And so now I have 3 interruptions, and most notably, as soon as my opponent special summons a monster, I can go ahead and activate Brilliant Flame Runick. And this is relevant because not only will this interrupt the opponent's Flame Runick, by destroying, I can then use Runick Spring's effect to recycle 3 from my graveyard to draw 3 cards. In this case, I draw Yugioh, Contact, and Dispel Runick, which gives me another interruption. So this end board ends up being around 4 interruptions again, as well as having the whole entire engine kicking into action. Now, as for what this deck can do in a duel, well, in this case I'm going up against an AI because this deck takes a long time to do duels and I don't want to put a random player through this, so it's an AI Sword Soul. But this is relevant for showing what this deck looks like. In this case, I will just put an autoplay because this can take a while. I am drawing cards, using my engine to just get the Darklord part online to eventually search interruption, and then going through the Runick line to get to the field spell and have my 2 interruptions. And even against a card as strong as VIII, I can usually try and turn it off by destroying a monster, and then negate TAMA using Sanctified Darklord's effect by sending Superbia. They activate Desires, banishing 10, and drawing 2, and then I can chain Dispel Runick, ripping a random card from their hand, and banishing from the top of their deck as well. Then I'll use Runick Spring to put back 3 and draw 3, but I will get ashed, and this is a problem. This deck is very vulnerable to Ash because of the field spell. But it's not the end of the game because of the Darklord engine, as that is still very much online. And so in this case, I'll go to my turn and draw Darklord Indulged, using Indulged Darklord's effect, and they will chain Blackout, to which I can chain Eggshell to copy the Reborn spell to grab the other Eggshell from my graveyard. But I do still get to activate Indulged Darklord's effect, summoning to their field Ukebek as it's small and I want it in my graveyard, and searching another Eggshell for my deck. And I can pass from here, and my opponent has nothing really to do. So then, I draw another Indulged Darklord, which I go ahead and use its effect again, summoning Amdas to the opponent's field, and searching Superbia. I can then use Eggshell, discarding Superbia, and drawing 2, in this case, into Brilliant Flame Runick and Dispel Runick, which offer a lot of interruption, and I can start clearing up their board. They can even summon a TAMA again, which I can chain Eggshell to, copying the trap from the graveyard and recycling it, and negating TAMA's effect and gaining life points. As you can see, this is the game plan of the deck. I draw into Freeze and Curse, and I can just start beating over them, as I can hold the Runick spell cards until I actually need to use them, as I do want to keep my battle phase online. Then I draw into Banishment of the Darklords, which I can go ahead and use to search out the Reborn spell, Contact. I use this to bring back Superbia, and attempt to trigger Superbia's effect, which is met with a Chalice Negate. But this is fine, as this was mostly a bonus. I then use Eggshell's effect to copy Banishment to search for my deck another copy of Sanctified. I say Sanctified and pass. As you can see, this deck can basically loop every single card in this deck endlessly. I use Eggshell again to attempt to use the Reborn spell and bring Ukebek back. Using Ukebek, I will go ahead and try to dump a card, but I'll be ashed again. Once again, this is mostly fine. I activate Runick Deceit, and then go to battle, just clearing for their board and doing some damage. In this case, they begin to make some amount of plays, using Vessel, but doesn't matter as I can then chain Dispel to rip a card from their hand, in this case ripping Desires and banishing from the top of their deck, and then chaining Deceit to banish another one. They'll use VIII, but it doesn't matter, there's no good target to put back in hand. They'll summon a VIII, clear up a monster, and then pass. And I'm comfortable just passing like this. Not like I can go to battle, unfortunately, because of the Runicks, but it doesn't really matter. The game's pretty much under control at this point. I can swing in, then activate Point to search a Runick card. At this point, the opponent's getting very dangerously low resources in the deck, and just cards, and I can recycle my Runick cards finally with the field spell to draw 3. In this case, I just discard the extra gammas as I don't need 3 in my hand. They'll attempt to summon a monk, and use Fushida again, which is once again fine. This deck doesn't care about cards being bounced to hand. They'll then go for a long one. This will be met with a Brilliant Flame Runick, destroying an opponent's special summon monster. This will then banish from the top. One thing to note is that now quite a few of my Runicks are turned off. The reason why is my opponent only will have one card left in deck. So, say I can't activate Point because I'd have to banish 4 and they don't have 4 to banish. But it doesn't really matter, as there are still Runicks in deck that I can activate to mail them out completely. So I'll take 1000, which is fine. I can use Destruction and summon from my extra deck Gary to protect me, and then milling the top card of their deck, securing the win. And that's basically the game plan for this deck. It intends to slow games to a crawl and out-resource the opponent until it can either eventually mill them out, they surrender, or you eventually beat over with Darklord Superbia. Now, as for what I think of the deck, well, it shows promise just by being able to outgrind a lot of decks and constantly loop resources like nothing else can, but it is incredibly slow and struggles to put a lot of pressure on the opponent because it can't even go to a battle phase a lot of the time. And the mill win condition is neat, but it's more of a fun gimmick, and when you try and actually do it, it takes a long time, like 20 turns long, and sometimes even turns off your own spell cards. The deck can also brick, and going second is weird, but it is very good going first, especially once it's set up, and there's not many decks that can comfortably out-resource it at all.